welcome back to Five for Family. We're so excited that you're joining us again this week. So our special guest this week is someone I think is fantastic. He is my co-teacher in youth ministry with the youth and the middle schoolers. He also teaches the preschoolers with his wife. So everyone, welcome Mr. Harold. Harold, on to our story.
Hello everyone. I'm here to read a story for you today. God makes a way. Moses and the Red Sea from Exodus 14 through 15. Moses and God's people escaped out of Egypt and into the wilderness. They didn't know the way, but God knew the way, and he would show them. I will bring you to a new home, a special land, God promised them. I will look after you. I am with you. God sent a big cloud for them to follow, a pillar of smoke stretching up to the sky. It moved in front of them as they walked and shaded them from the blazing heat of the day. And when it was time to rest, it stopped. All through the cold desert night, it kept them warm, glowing like a fire. God led his people through the desert to the edge of a great sea. They were just wondering how to cross it when suddenly they heard a terrible thundering and pounding. It sounds almost like horses' hooves. They shaded their eyes to look back and screamed. It was Pharaoh and his army were coming to get them. Pharaoh had changed his mind again. Get my slaves back, he screeched, and charged out into the desert after them with 600 of his fastest horsemen and every single chariot in Egypt. What were God's people going to do? In front of them was a big sea. It was so big, there was no way around it. But there was no way through it either. It was too deep. They didn't have any boats, so they couldn't sail across. And they couldn't swim across because it was too far, and they might drown. And they couldn't turn back because Pharaoh was chasing them. They could see the flashing swords now, glinting in the baking sun, and then dust clouds, and the chariots after scary chariots surging towards them. So they did the only thing there was left to do. Panicked. We're gonna die, they shrieked. Don't be afraid, Moses said. But there's nothing we can do, they screamed. God knows you can't do anything, Moses said. God will do this for you. Trust him and watch. But there's no way out, they screamed. God will make a way, Moses said. Another minute and it would have been over. But the strangest thing happened. God made a pillar of the smoke above. It moved behind his people and hid them from the Egyptians. Then God sent a strong east wind to blow all night long. It blew on the water of the big sea. It blew it to the left and it blew it to the right until it blew it to a towering walls of water. 2 of them. And there, right through the middle of the sea, a muddy pathway opened up. And God's people walked across the dry land. When the Egyptians tried to follow, the walls of the water crashed back down on them and swallowed them up. God's people were safe. They danced and laughed and sang and thanked God. When there had been no way out, God made a way. Many years later, once again, God was going to make a way where there was no way. From the beginning, God's children had been running from him and hiding. God knew his children could never be happy without him, but they couldn't get back to him by themselves. They were lost. They didn't know their way back, but God knew the way. And one day, he would show them. Thank you, and be blessed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harold. So now we're on to the question and answer portion. So don't forget, after the question, press pause. So your first question: how did the Israelites react when they realized the Egyptians were chasing them? Press pause. How do you react when difficult situations happen in your life? Press pause. How did Moses react when he realized the Egyptians were chasing them? Press pause. What can Moses' behavior and actions teach us about how we should react? Press pause. So parents, I gave you this challenge a couple weeks ago, and we're going to do it again. I want you to share with your children a time in your life when something very hard or difficult happened and how you responded and what you learned about God. And it doesn't have to be the perfect response. This is to show your kids genuinely how God has walked you through something. Press pause. So, tonight's activity can include that prayer journal we started a couple of weeks ago, as we look again at ways that we walk through hard times and the way that God answers those prayers. So this is a great opportunity as a family to sit down and think through some things that you're concerned about and write them in the prayer journal, and then look back at it. Even look back at the prayer journal from a couple of weeks ago and see if God has answered that. So one of the more kinesthetic activities that we have for this evening is a game of freeze tag. So in the story, the Israelites were running away and the Egyptians were chasing them. So it's time for some tag. You can also act out this story. This is a great one to put on costumes, make your own chariots, use those Amazon boxes laying around the house and build your own chariot and act it out. You can definitely always draw it, build it with Legos, just have some fun and keep your kids thinking about God's faithfulness and how He is consistent with His people no matter what the situation. Love you guys, miss you so much. Looking forward to hugging you and seeing you in person, but until then, I know that God is faithful and I can't wait to hear how He's using this time with your family in your lives. Love you.